Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the recording notice in the weird voice. And welcome to another webinar about RavenDB and AI. We actually thinking about calling 2025 for RavenDB the year of AI, mostly because we have three release features for AI: VectorSearch, embedding generation, and GenAI, which was just released in RC and is supposed to be released fully by the end of this month. And there is another really exciting AI feature that we'll talk about later. So let's talk about GenAI and let's talk about what it means for your systems. And I think that a really interesting aspect is to consider that what made ChatGPT so big is the fact that you had the chat model, not the fact that you could send a query to an AI and get a reply back. The fact that you had this turnaround of being able to ask a question and get and ask a question and be able to narrow down exactly what's going on has made a huge impact on the overall interaction, adoption, etc. The experience of I ask a question, I get a reply, ask another question, and narrow things down is absolutely amazing. I don't think I ever saw someone who used it for the first time who didn't go, wow. And everything else started from there because that really captured the imagination, that really made it everything possible. The question here, do you have a place in your application for AI? And I'm going to assume that everyone from the board of director to investor to your grandpa is going to say, yeah, do AI, do AI. You have to have AI in the system. There's so many things that you think that, oh, I wish I could do AI in here. That would be amazing. But can you? For real? And that is an interesting question because I want you to look at this image right here. And I think I generate this image using AI, obviously, as you should. But this is the really, really funny image because there are physical signs like that. If you go search Google for translate server error, you will find a lot of actual signs like that. And it turns out that when you actually want to use AI in your systems, that things matter. Because the most important thing about the chat is that you have a human in the loop. You have someone who is going to be looking at the data and hopefully at least make some consideration, whatever this data means anything or not. If I want to use AI in my system, what am I actually going to do? And one final thought, you see this, I don't speak Chinese, but I asked the AI to write me something like this, and I use the Chinese phrase or word or whatever this is for restaurant. What it generated was this thing, which apparently stands for feast or big meal or something like that. So I find it absolutely hilarious that there are multiple levels of this joke here. That's absolutely funny. So this is a huge challenge. How do I address that? How do I work with that? So let's talk about how we can properly use GenAI and AI in general in my system. And the first thing to do is, well, we can use a chat. We can put the human in the loop. And that's really, really interesting if you think about that. So what happens if what I'm generating is not new data, but I'm doing a summary, categorization, stuff like that. And the interesting about this is that it turns out that there is a huge level of flexibility when you talk about this. For example, let's say that I want to categorize my bank transactions. Well, if pizza night is entertainment or food, that's a judgment call. And it is entirely reasonable, even for a human who is looking at that, to choose either one. And I think this is more or less the most interesting aspect that we have to consider about AI. Leaving aside the entire aspect of AI and hallucinations and stuff like that. If I use a mechanical talk, so if I took a person and ask it to do the same task that I'm asking AI to do, I would have much of the same issues. Different peoples, even the same person at different times, would give me different answers for the same queries. And they are not necessarily a single wrong or right answer. And we can utilize that if we want to effectively use AI in our systems. So here's another example. If I'm looking at your shopping basket, I'm going to say, oh, here's stuff that you might also like. And you know what? If I recommended stuff for you that you don't like, well, no harm, no foul, because you're just going to skip, scented deodorant because you don't like it. Or you're going to tell me, hey, I don't like those sort of things, and I can optimize myself for that. The other sort of things that we want to have is when I call it scaffolding, or basically it is that, oh, here is some content. Let's tag it, do sentiment analysis. I have some data that I want to generate into to bring some order into that. This one I really like. If I like to think about the GenAI and AI model in general as a receptionist. They're not going to do the whole job, but the receptionist doesn't have to understand everything. But she's able to give you the right direction. Oh, you need to go to room 6 and you need to fill up this form 97A and stuff like that. So before we go there, I want to show you how we use AI in RavenDB. And here we have some information. This is part of the sample data. And we have something new. We have AI data here. And you can see that based on this, we are generating this key. And let's see what happens now. So I just saved that, and hopefully something magical will happen very quickly. And we have this. And cooking school. And other stuff like this. And what we can see here is that we write some data, free-form data here, and suddenly we have additional information, stuff like that, that suddenly make sense. So I can think about how I can use something like that. I can take raw input from my users and throw that into something like this. And you saw that in a few seconds, I actually had meaning, structured meaning. And I think that the aspect of structure is so important because usually we talk about models and AI and you get this chatting in, which is nice, but I want to program. I want to be able to operate on structured data in known format that I can, write code on this. I can now go ahead and index this AI-generated data, allow you to search on that. For that matter, I can now do crazy things. Like, let's go here. And you see that I have this guy here. Let's say that I want to do search on people who have the skill of cooking. So I'm going to do and I keep, sorry, I have to do it the other way around. Okay. So now you can see that this is based on cooking school because I have cooking here, even though I search for chef. And the actual problem here is that we can look into, well, I don't have the results here, but what I'm actually saying here, give me everything based on distance. So I guess that out of cold call and public speaking, or probably because of this, Toastmaster, so it try to go to something like Toastmasters. This is the closest thing to that. But the fun part about this is that I'm able to generate structured data. From the structured data, I'm able to do vector search. And suddenly I have the ability to do so much more concrete items. That's really exciting. Oh, we have a raised hand by Peter. And Peter, you can talk if you like. And if you have questions, feel free to ask it. We also have a Q&A if you want to ask some questions. And by the way, I haven't said that, but feel free at any given point of time, raise a hand, ask a question. I will be very happy to answer any questions that you have, and I really like it to be a more interactive experience. That's a lot more fun for me. Okay, so let's talk about some nice ways to deal with GenAI properly. Let's talk about this thing. So what you can see here is that I may want to change the language, and I may want to use AI to translate that. And sometimes the AI is going to make really, really bad choices in translation, for example. But it's very rare. And even something like this is machine translation. That means that, okay, don't blame me, this is OpenAI or the computer made a problem, is typically sufficient to allow you to actually make use of this, especially because the associated cost around that is so enormously huge. If I wanted to do manual translation of my recipes, then it's going to be super expensive. But I can throw all of that into the AI model and get everything out, with less cost than a cup of coffee. So that's really important. So something to be aware of, however, is that this wasn't nice. Okay, so in this case, I think it was Air Canada, and the chatbot said that yes, we would give you a refund on this ticket if so and so happened, and apparently that wasn't the correct response. Now, personally speaking, I think that a $500 airline ticket is not that expensive to just say, okay, take it, we'll deal with that. But I'm assuming that the actual lawsuit was much more expensive. But this is something that you have to be aware of. How do I actually make use of AI properly? Because AI can make mistakes. So whatever this recommendation, whatever this is, hey, be aware that this is best effort, not actually verify, etc. So now, let's talk about some of the more interesting challenges. Okay, so we understood that, I'm running with AI, it may not do the exact same thing that I wanted it to do, especially because two people may not always get the same result if I ask them to do the same task. But there are also quite a few additional challenges that you have to deal with. So if I'm going to ChatGPT, it's very easy. I have a questions, I throw that, I'm done. I could have gone to ChatGPT and copy-pasted this thing and get the right results, probably. But if I want to do that in a programmatic fashion, and I want to do that in an ongoing fashion, it turns out that this is a lot harder because there is a whole bunch of stuff that I have to deal with, most of which is utter crap to deal with. Like, you have to be aware of that there is only so much that you can send to the model in one shot. and you have to keep track of memory if you want to do some back and forth with the model, and you have to realize how much tokens you're sending, and there are rate limits. There are multiple levels of rate limits, which is super annoying. And I don't want to get raw text. I want to get action structures I can get, and basically it sucks. I like to call it the logistics of dealing with AI. So typically, again, going back to the ChatGPT model, I write a prompt, I get results back. I, as a human, read it, understand it, and act upon that. And when I'm doing that through code, this is a whole lot different. And Ryan, if you had questions, feel free to put that in the chat. And obviously, you're paying for AI, whatever by buying a really expensive GPU or by renting machines on the cloud or paying to any of the providers directly. So now let's talk about another aspect. Oh, wait, what's that? That's yesterday. I don't know if you were aware of that, but OpenAI actually had a major outage. I hear that the developer productivity worldwide just went nosedive. And again, something that you have to deal with. How do you deal with that? What's going on, etc. So let's talk about how this actually works. I wanted to translate some recipe to Spanish, and here is this, and here are the results. And here is the raw data that they have to deal with. And again, notice that in this case, I just want to push a string, get a string back. That's the easiest way to handle that. Notice how much code and how much other stuff that I have to write in order to actually manage that. For example, if I update the list of allergens for a recipe, do I need to retranslate that? Or is it just, some information on the side that I don't care about? So let's talk about what this means. And you know what? I'm going to skip that and just going directly into the demos. Mostly because this is a lot more fun. So here is what we're going to do. We're going to look at product translations. And here we have some product, and here we have a bomb. And here are some translations for that. Apparently, we also got allergens for bomb, which is fun. Let's say that I want to translate something that is nicer, which is an Android, Samsung phone. Hit save, and a few seconds later, magic is going to happen. And here we go. And hopefully we have enough people here who can, presumably you can read that this is a telephone versus phone, etc. Question here, how do I do that? Because it looks like magic, but it's not actually magic. I've done that. So in order to do that, I have to go to the AI hub inside of RavenDB. This is part of the 7.1 release. And I have to go and define a GenAI task. Let's go and look at the first one that we have here. So this is translate recipes. And here I'm saying that I want this task to run over products. And I want you to extract the following context for the model. So if I'm looking, here we have, you can see this is whatever this is. So I can say test context. And this is what it pulls out. The idea here is that I'm able to extract from the document just the specific information that I want to be able to generate that and able to send it to the model so it can operate on that. And now you can see this is where the actual magic is happening. Here is the translate recipe. This is the prompt. This is what I'm telling the model to do. And here I have some sample response. And now we can see something really interesting. So now what I'm doing, I'm sending this data to the model to do this, to operate on this prompt, and I'm telling it, this is what I want it to look like. And you can see here that I have very different output, because here I'm asking it, okay, this is apparently blue cheese. And here is the rest of this thing. So think about what just happened. I extracted some context from the model. Here is the prompt that I'm asking the model to do something. And here is the actual output that we have. This is I'm telling the model how it should look like. I can also provide some JSON schema, but I find that this is much easier and nicer to operate on than the schema. Finally, I have this output from the model that I'm just going to push into some property inside of the document. And notice that in here, what I have, this is code. So I can make decision, I can update, I can modify things as I see fit. Now I can save that. And now for all new operations, let's go here. It didn't trigger. I'm going to make it trigger by forcing it to do that. So I'm updating this document. This goes into the AI model, and now it's going to regenerate this because we have something new going on here. Apparently it didn't like that. Let's see what happened. Okay, this is the old arrow, and here is the new changes. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm using a custom build. I have to stop it here. This is a bug because I'm using an old build. Let me just go here and refix that. Those are the dangers of doing live demos on RC software. Sometimes I run into bugs in the software. Okay, so I can see we have a much nicer structure. Here's the description. Red caviar. This looks much nicer. I at least can read that stuff. Okay, but one thing that I really want you to pay attention to, notice how much I didn't have to do. I didn't have to deal with the setup, etc. I just had to write some code in here to tell it what data do I want to go to get out. I had to tell it how I should update the document, and here's the prompt and the actual schema that I have. No, go away. Okay, so notice how we do that. Notice that now it updates on the fly. In fact, let's do this update on the fly so we can talk about this. I wonder what would happen if I do this. And again, a few seconds, then we get an updated version. I hope I will actually get something fancy now. And this is basically just the same thing as before, but now in various languages. You know what I want to do now? Let's say that now I change the document. I wonder what would happen now. I added specific the allergens here because obviously I'm not going to get a marker from the model, so it would override this. But it's not overriding that. And that's really interesting because part of what we're doing here is being really, really intelligent about when do we call the model. I don't want to call the model each time the data changes if there is no point. What did I change? I changed the unit in stocks and I changed something in here. But I didn't change anything that I'm going to send to the model. So Raven is going to say, hey, if I send the model, I'm going to get the same results back, more or less. We'll touch on that later. But the whole idea here is that being the case, I can skip going to the model entirely. And that is an amazing thing because it means that I have the ability to be much more flexible in when am I going to go to the model, what am I going to do with that. So now, we have product translations. We have also seen how we can extract structural information from the model using when we did that on the employees. And let's see how we do that. So here we extract all of the notes. And this is my prompt, extract structural information. And I tell it, I want it to look more or less like this. And then I'm going to put that in the AI output. I'm going to put the output in the AI data property. That's it. Now I'm done. This is cool. This is nice. But we can do so much more interesting things about this. So I took some PowerShell issues from GitHub. And I decided I'm going to look into them. And you can see this is where we have interesting things. Here is the body and all sorts of answers here, etc. So I went ahead and defined my own ETL process. And this is what it does. It extracts a whole bunch of information from the system. Title, body, when it was created, reaction count, etc. You can see how it works. Sorry, wrong. I don't want issues. Yeah, it's putting that in the wrong location. Never mind that. This is what I want. So now here's the data that I extracted out of this model. Sorry, this is the document itself, and now I'm extracting just this data from the model. And now here I have a much larger prompt where I'm telling it, I want you to determine if it should be escalated. And I'm telling it how to do that based on how critical this is, how much sentiments we have, whatever they are angry, there is a problem, they keep coming back and forth, etc. So this is a nice prompt for doing that. Finally, I want to say, also tell me why. And I find that for myself, telling the model, I want you to tell me why it has a huge impact. Because it means that I'm able to generate proper understanding and not just, oh, this is yes or no or something like that. This actually tells me what's going on. So now you can see that I'm asking that. And then, hey, I needed to do that. Why? Because it's core functionality, it's critical to user workflows, blah, blah, blah. There's some urgency, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So now I can do that. And now this is something that I found to be absolutely delicious. So let's talk about what we actually have here. What we have here is we are using the output of the model to make decisions. Think about what this means. I have this issue, and I'm running that through the model. And after I run that through the model, I'm getting these results back. And based on whatever the model thinks that I should or shouldn't escalate, I'm going to create an escalation document. And this is this guy right here. Okay. And now I can actually try to look into that. And now I can actually, I can set up a subscription on this or put up some events. If I have more information, I can try to assign that to the particular engineer, etc. So the impact that we have here is absolutely huge, because now, and this goes back to here, I don't deal with text or some stuff that I have structural input, structural output. I'm able to programmatically operate on that. The information that we get here is actionable, indexable. If I have if I added this explanation, the reasoning, that actually turns out to be super important for being able to audit later, being able to reason about what's going on, stuff like that. It's even more important when you realize that I actually have some impact about this. So consider how a model behaves. And the model is going to generate data one token at a time. So because I'm putting the reasoning at the end, that means that it's going to first reach this conclusion, and then it's going to explain to me why this is the team that was selected and how it was handled, etc. And I just find it absolutely delicious, especially because now I can also go here and you see, oh, let's open this issue. Or I can start looking into categorizing even further, because now I have additional information from the model to deal with that. And that's so exciting because it opens so many really interesting things for me. And the key aspect that we have to deal with here, I don't have to build complex structures. I write the prompt. I write here it is. Here is the extract the context. Here is the prompt that I'm going to write. This is the extracted context. This is the sample that I want to have. This is the model. This is the update. And then I'm done. I've broken up the task of integrate AI into my system into something that become trivially understandable steps. And now think about the other places where you can actually utilize AI in this manner. And this can be, I have a blog post so I can filter out for spam comments. Or I can automatically detect that this is urgent and raise the priority of a ticket. Now, the fun thing about this is that in many cases, I can utilize that for decision support, for assistance, and that's just amazing. Even if I don't have to 100% rely on the AI getting me the exact same thing and doing the right thing all the time. Okay? So, to follow up on everything, we have a prompt. You tell me what the prompt, and I do the rest. That's the basic idea. We are programmatically processing the output. We are handling everything in the background. So you're not waiting. You don't care if there is some problem with OpenAI. We will retry it as necessary. We are dealing with all of the myriad of rate limits, etc., that you have to deal with. We know how to do this properly and fast. So think about the impact that it does for your system, because it means that, I don't actually need to deal with complexity. I don't have to integrate AI into my application. I can just put that in the backend and still get all of those benefits from that. Typically, when we talk about models and AI, we have to think about cost and what is involved in that. So I actually went ahead and tried to figure out what's going on. So this is my spend from running over or preparing for this talk. And I think I can afford spending that much, maybe even 10 times as much, which is this amount. So let's talk about this for real. Let's say that I'm using the more complicated GenAI Tasks, which is classification of or escalation of issues inside of the PowerShell repository, which has just under 13,000 entries. And that's going to cost me about $115 if I run all of that through GPT-4 Mini, or I can pay significantly more if I'm using this one, but you want to use the appropriate model, and cost are obviously some consideration of that. Now, as I mentioned, look at this guy. This is how it works. We are pushing 32 items at the same time. And that can take a while. But again, we're doing the appropriate aggregation. We know how to handle rate limits, etc. Now let's talk about caching and how it works. If you remember previously, I went here and I wanted to regenerate that. I have to go and update this guy. So let's talk about all of these GenAI hashes, etc. Let's talk about what this actually means. So what we are actually doing is we are hashing the prompt, the update, and the schema that you have, as well as the extracted context. And we are generating a cryptographic hash out of that. It's this guy. And if this guy didn't change from one time the document have updated to the next, we know that the request that we're going to send to the model is going to be the same. So I can not update the document, because even though the model are not deterministics, we assume that two calls with the same information are going to generate the same semantic information. Okay, so it may not give you the same exact detail, but it's going to give you the same meaning. Now, if you're using something like enum to construct the results, you will get the same output at the same time. Notice that in this case, for example, here I sent 32 requests to the model. It took me 26 seconds. Here I only sent 8 requests to the model because 84 of them were already cached for me. So I didn't have to touch that. You see that it was much faster, less token use, etc. And now, let's talk about some safety consideration for using GenAI with RavenDB. So the first thing about this is that we are running on your AI model. So let's go back and look at what we have here. The very first thing that we do is we select the connection string that we want to use. And this is the connection string that you see, and you can see that in this case, I'm using OpenAI in this case, but I'm using my own API key. So this belongs to my account. If you're running AI work, GenAI work with RavenDB, you're not going to talk to the RavenDB model or something like that. You're going to talk to your own. Just to give you some example, you look at how many of them you have available. So you can pretty much use whatever you want in order to, oh yeah, I can handle that, I can handle that. So you can bring your own model, even if you're running an OpenAI and you fine-tune a model or something like that, you can handle that. Even after we say that you only trust your own model, then you still can filter out what data is actually being sent to the model, because only what is extracted from gen context is being sent. So, I have, sensitive information here, but I'm only sending this information out, so I have perfect control over that. After you get the results from the model, you can apply that using your own logic. So you can say, does it make sense to me to do that, etc. So you have even more control over the whole thing. You can enhance the information, classify, tagging, those sort of things. I really like the idea of using GenAI to do recommendation and decision support, to the point that, here's everything that you need to do, and go ahead and do that. A great example in the context of the issue tracker is what happens if, and let's do this. Let's build a completely new one from scratch. So right now I'm going to do a new GenAI task and a false response, false issue response. And I'm going to use OpenAI. And this is going to use issues. Great. And what do I want from this? I want so I'm passing the title and the body, and that's it. So this is what this looks like. And now you're doing false pass evaluation of issues, issue tracked in GitHub. What you can extract as much structured information from the input and ask for additional insights from the user if we don't have it. Stuff like version, OS, etc. that can help in debugging. And now tags, question, version, OS, severity, area, etc. Questions. Get a good result. And now I do this, and it thinks, and now you can see that it gave me some additional information. Now I can do stuff like, oh, if I have tags, I'm going to add them. If I have questions, I can put them to as additional answers or output dot questions. Let's see if this did this properly. And you can see stuff like that. And there is some JavaScript to insert that, but I'm not going to be handling that. So, but you can see how this works and how this actually generates valid values. That's absolutely amazing when you think about that. I think that, sorry, now it would bug me if I don't do that. So I have to do it like this. See if this will work. Not as much. Anyway, not going to deal with more JavaScript nonsense here. So I have the ability to do really, really fun stuff. And now I have the ability to, give you more information, smarter system, etc. And overall structure is so much nicer. Especially because if I would run that on a different model where I do have the version OS, so I can get actual reasonable values to ask here, I would get even better results. So the whole idea is that RavenDB is here to make it easy and possible for you to use AI in a reliable, consistent, simple fashion. You can use AI to do a whole bunch of really interesting things. You don't have to modify your application. So you can do everything in the backend and still use all of these results. GenAI with RavenDB is really exciting for me. I really love what we are doing. And that's it. You can get the bits right now. So you can go to RavenDB/download. And everything is located in the dev section. Download that, get the developer license, you can start using it right away. Do you have any questions? I would be very happy to take them right now. While we're waiting for that, we have a preview feature that we are looking at, and I would really love it if you will be able to, if you're interested, you will ping us in a few weeks. I hope to be able to share something that hopefully is going to knock your socks off. And Peter, I think you have a question.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Earlier when you first did the example where you put in the freehand and you added that there was some Chinese. So there was I can't remember if it was triggered by the actual description you put there. So you actually misspelled Chinese. I'm trying to wonder, was that important? Was that something that was the AI worked out what the spelling was meant to be or not?
You're talking about in here?
Yeah, the first one you added in where she also completed a course in, so Chinese was misspelled, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because.
So
yeah.
Did the AI, did it look at this? Yeah. And it looked at it, did it say, okay, this is...
Here, I'm writing it like this, and it's written like this. Yeah. Yeah, that was not intentional, by the way. It's just a typo. But that's actually a great example because you see that it's actually understood the intent and not what I actually wanted to do.
Okay. So it's sort of a little bit like full text search that AI does anyway.
It's better than full text search, and this actually touches on the. This actually touches on what happens here, because if we look here, and now you can see that I search for chef and I get cookie. And I can search for, let's say, I'm going to search for friend, and hopefully I'm going to get something like associate here. Okay. Probably this is the membership. And the idea here is that I can search by intent. This is already existing feature in RavenDB. This is where we have a vector search, semantic search, however I want to call it. What we are seeing here with Laura is that I asked the model to provide me what languages she speaks, and it read this, understood that I meant actual Chinese, and gave me the real value here instead of whatever else we had done.
Okay, one more question while I'm here. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Is it possible to have your own hardware running? Let's say you have this smaller version of DeepSeek or something, so you don't need to rely on the third party like OpenAI?
Yeah. So in order to do that, you have to go through some hoops. You have to, one second. Okay. You have to run Olama, which apparently I don't have anymore. Okay. So basically, you have to do something like this. And then it would run it, or Olama serve, or something like that. And then you go and say, oh, this is this. And this is that. And it will not run because I don't have it actually running right now, but it will. You can absolutely do that. This is what I meant by you can bring your own Where was that? You can bring your own model. So you can absolutely use your own DeepSeek, etc., and it works really, really nicely with that. Okay. Great. So, any more questions? Whatever from Peter or anyone else? Awesome. So, final thought, if you're interested, ping us about that. I would love to get more feedback on that. I think this is an amazing feature, even better than the GenAI that we already have, and I love this feature to that. Okay. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.